Hello, my name's Steph from My Driver Classic, and today I'm looking at something that probably doesn't sit in the classic box for many. But look, here's the thing. I feel like on this channel, we don't just look at bona fide classics that have already ticked the box. I think we should be looking at stuff that's a classic of the future, or certainly a bit of an oddball. And when I got offered this Renault Avantime on my drive home, I answered the phone call and I said, do you know what? I am on my way, because less than 9,000 of these were made between 2001 and 2003. And I thought, I've never seen one in the wild. I've only ever seen one in a museum. I thought, what are my chances of grabbing the keys to one in the future? Probably zero, especially on this side of the water. So I thought, right, let's crack on with this Avantime. I'll show you it all at home, and hopefully we can pique interest in probably what is one of the worst selling cars of all time. In 1999, many businesses are worrying about things like the millennium bug, but Renault has a much bigger going concern, which is the Renault Avantime. It was launched at the 1999 Geneva Motor Show after being shown as a concept earlier in the year at a press launch. The car came to market in the autumn of 2001 and then came to the UK in early 2002. So essentially it launches as a left-hand drive vehicle before being converted over to right-hand drive in early 2002. If you're wondering why it takes so long to get to market after the 99 Motor Show, it's due to a bit of time spent making that pillarless roof meet the safety standards. The car had a special target audience, which we'll talk about later on, but the car was largely as a result of an outstanding obligation. Renault had decided to move away the production of the Espace from Matra's team and factory in central France, not through bad blood, but simply because the car was then due to be made from sheet steel, instead of that ferrous and composite mix, which had been Matra's specialism. Now, the idea behind the Avantime was twofold. Keep that obligation to Matra, but also create a car which was unforgettable. In fact, the design project manager said he wanted a car which would continually astonish somebody as they walked around the car. And I think today, even as you look around it, you think, blimey. The front-engine, front-wheel drive Avantime did ambitiously achieve many firsts in quite a number of areas. Now, some of the ones that stand out are, it's got the heaviest and longest doors for any car on the market at the time. It has an astonishing amount of luggage space. So with the seats built up, as you see here today, travelling around, it's 530 litres in the boot and a further 27 litres dotted around in spaces in the cabin, front and rear. If you wanted to increase that to 900 litres, you could do that by utilising the split back seats. It has an elbow width room of 1,466 millimetres. That's 57.7 inches for the driver, and 1,333 millimetres, which is about 56.4 inches in the rear for your passengers, which was a record in its class for the time and really shows how they've used that space. Renault was so proud of this car, and in fact they were so proud of the quality and durability, the car was sold with a 12-year anti-corrosion guarantee. Now that might not seem much today, but that was a big thing at the time because many cars were going rotten well within that first decade of life, so it was a real big thing to be putting that out there. Renault also considered life beyond the sales floor with an introduction of an anti-intrusion protection and security immobiliser. It was all developed in accordance with Thatcher, an added bonus to essentially reduce the cost of insurance quotes for owners and reduce the likelihood of the car being stolen. If you're wondering how all this works, by the way, they did things like protection against door piercing, a strengthened steering column to protect against errant screwdrivers, and automatic door and boot activated locking when the car began moving. If you look at a press release issued at the time to the press and Renault dealerships at the time, we can see that the company thought that it was going to do really well with all of this, and they predicted sales of 1,500 Renault Avantimes for 2002. And then when they combined the sales of the Espace and the Versatis, they predicted that Renault were going to take a 5.5 5.5% market share of the exec market. And if you're wondering, they only managed to sell 5,037 across all markets for the Avantime in 2002. So they didn't really achieve what they set out to do. If you're wondering where it was sitting price-wise, the guide price issued, and I've only got this on a press release for the time, so apologies, we get £24,000 for the 2-litre turbodynamic manual and £27,000 for the 3-litre V6 manual privilege model. They don't give us anything for the automatics. In terms of your engines, there's the aforementioned 2 and 3 litre for the UK market, but if you were going for the overseas left-hand drive, there was also the 2.2 litre. Although guide prices only mentioned manual, as I said before, the 6-speed manual wasn't the only transmission option, and you also had a 5-speed automatic. Tech spec for the car is given as an overall on the sales guides for the time, but they are as following. So you get a top speed of 137 miles per hour, and your MPG is 17.7 for urban driving, 31.7 for extra urban, and 25 for combined. Sadly, for a few reasons, including the Avantime being a massive financial drain, Matra decided their time in automotive production was done and dusted. And Renault, reviewing the poor sales, also thought, well, I don't think we're going to carry on with the Avantime either. So they called time on all of it and brought to a close one of the worst selling cars of all time in 2003. I talk about modern cars and talk about them all looking the same, and I'm going to have to give the Avantime an accolade that it doesn't really look like anything else I've ever been inside. And that both excites me and intrigues me, because this is a bit of an interesting thing. Because if you look at cars nowadays, everybody plays it safe, and the reason is they learnt lessons through cars like this, where people were presented with a car that you would have definitely had an opinion on, and they got to choose. You either loved it or you hated it. There's no in between with this. And one of the things about this car is that, as you can see on this dash, it is incredibly minimalist. It's either not showing when the car's on, or it's hidden away behind a panel. And as I sit here, and I've been sitting here for about 15 minutes, I don't know if I like it or hate it. It just intrigues me. So as I turn it on, I'm going to take a line from Ian at Hubnut, because French. Because look, the speedo and the fuel gauge are not working. And in fact, we're just left with an orange square with a red dot in. So who knows what's going on there. So we're going to be running with a speedo app in the background today. As well as that, you've got the rev counter, which is lit up, and you've got the temperature built in on each side. Now, if you see, those panels look interchangeable, which is great. And this whole dash is very interchangeable between left-hand and right-hand drive. An ingenious idea, because it just means that when you're building it for the different markets, you're building a car which isn't too expensive to swap over from side to side. Now, on this side, of course, you would have had this on the driver's side. On the left-hand drive cars is your temperature panels. That's just for your aircon and your heating inside the car. But what else have we got? Well, I just keep pressing panels to see what will pop up. So up here, really bizarrely, you've got the glove box. So you've just got that space inside there. I do, you know what, the more I look at it, the more I do actually quite like it. It's just not really like anything that I've ever tested before. And I just keep pressing things to see what will happen. So here, you've got another glove box. You've got an airbag up there. This panel here, which did pop open earlier. There we go. You've got another panel here. So I'll tell you what, you can't say that the Avantime is short on storage space. You've got everything. Here, you've just got a selection of lights. So you've got fog, you've got hazard warning lights, and a button with 2 people on that I've still not quite worked out what it does. So I guess it's just some sort of secret ejector switch. But somebody serious will tell me in the comments section below. Now, coming down below here, you've got another panel here, which flips open, flips into life, and shows you your stereo. And you've also got controls on here on the steering wheel to control all of that. Because when you're inside here, and it feels bigger when you're sitting in the passenger seat, when you're sitting in the driver's seat, it just feels enormous, and everything feels like a bit of a reach. Below that, you've got your cigar lighter, and you've got an ashtray there as well. And then apart from that, you've got your indicators and horn over here, and you've got your wipers on this stalk over here. And that, my friends, is pretty much everything that you've got inside the Avantime. And I don't know, I sit on the fence with this. I both love and slightly dislike the way it's all laid out, the simplicity of it, but I do really like the fact that they've gone out there and they've designed a car which is very different. But look at the team behind it. It's the same team that brought you the Megane, the Twingo. Of course it's going to be different. Renault didn't make boring cars at this time. Now I'm going to start it up for you. We talked about those engine options when we were walking round, but just as a quick refresh, we've got the 2-litre petrol in this. It's very pleasing, it's very comforting as you sit inside. The seats are, although they look, I looked at them at first and I thought, they don't look that comfortable. They are all right. Now I'm going to belt up, we're going to go out for a drive and we'll see if the Avantime is a car which should have sold better or perhaps deserved its spot as one of the worst selling cars of all time. Right, let's go on an adventure. I swear, red lights only come on when we take cars on test. Usually I'm cruising through all these green lights. But this is a fantastic moment for me to tell you something that is a wee bit odd on the Avantime, is that because you've got this armrest here, and my seat's forward as it is, when you go to take the handbrake off, it's really weird because look, your arm catches on here. What a bizarrely placed handbrake. It needs to come forward, I would say, a good kind of 4 inches, 10 centimetres, because otherwise your arm is just catching it. Now anyway, back to the test, and apparently back to the traffic jams. Now as we cruise along, I'm moan about that handbrake, but there is no denying that this is one of the easiest cars to just jump in and start driving. It's incredibly smooth on the road, although it feels a little bit odd with all that space in front of you. It just feels like you're almost sitting in the back seat and driving without the driver there. It's a very odd experience. Everything feels very far away from you at the end of the bonnet. Now another plus point for the Avantime is that it's incredibly quiet inside. So as you cruise along, and you know, this is the right era of car for it, where you get something that's a little bit quirky but also is incredibly usable. It is very comfortable inside. These seats are comfortable. It takes all the speed bumps and potholes in its stride. It is enjoyable. It is something you could take on a long journey. But if you were going to go on a long journey with this, who would you take with you? Because it's a bit of a weird setup in the back, and I want to talk to you about it actually. In that I put my thinking cap on and I thought, how usable is this? Because it is an MPV and it is sitting in that MPV space. But here's the thing, so I got my friend Mike to come with me for a little drive today, and Mike was sitting in the back and I said, is your head touching the roof? Now he's laughing in this little video clip because his head is indeed touching the roof and he is only just over 6 foot tall. So that marks out your tall friends. They're not going to enjoy sitting in the back. And the other thing is, with these doors, they don't open very wide and they're also incredibly heavy, which I know I talked about when we were walking round. But with these doors not opening very wide, it then takes them out that market of people that are perhaps impaired ability-wise, in terms of mobility-wise, apologies, that perhaps have walking sticks, mobility aids, wheelchairs. They're going to really struggle to get in and out of this space. They'll be able to sit in the front perhaps, but they're not getting in the back. That front seat doesn't come forward enough and that door doesn't open wide enough. So that takes it out of that market. And another market that it probably wasn't very attractive to is people with children. Now the reason for that is because when you have children and you're trying to get them in and out of baby seats and all the rest of it, there's nothing worse than a two-door. And you know what's worse than a two-door? A two-door where the doors don't open very wide. Now, if you're wondering what I'm comparing it to, I'm comparing it to things like my Proton. The doors open wider on that. But I do wonder if it's perhaps because the way these doors are held on is it's double hinged. I find that, I was looking at that and thought, is that because we haven't got a B-pillar? Like, what is going on? Like, how is this all come together? It's just a wee bit strange. What I think might have worked a lot better is perhaps those doors that slide back. Do you know what I mean? A little bit like things like the Kia Sedona that was out at the same time. They kind of slide back and they're just a little bit more of an attractive prospect. Now, I've been very uncharitable to this lovely little car, well, a unique little car, and I've derided it for the fact that it hasn't really hit the spot with any sort of target market. But that's doing it a massive disservice because I'm not looking at all the things that it does get right. So what does it get right? Well, first of all, the handling. So as you come round, you can see here, it's incredibly light and it's really nice car to drive. You know, you've got a great seating position, it's comfortable on your back, it's quiet inside the cabin, so you've not got those stresses there of it sounding quite noisy, and it's nice and easy to change gear. Because of all these, you know, all these windows and all this glass everywhere and all the view, it feels incredibly light and airy inside. It's very easy to gauge how big the vehicle is, and so for that reason alone, it makes it something which is quite enjoyable to drive. I just don't think it's really set up for the passengers. And by the way, if you were wondering who this was aimed at, it was aimed at, and this is such a niche market, the children of people that had Espaces. So it pulled on that nostalgia in the same way that those early BMW Minis did, those early modern Beetles did. It was playing into that nostalgia market, except that I think that if you look at cars like the Mini and the Beetle, they've got such a huge following that I think any car that was made in tribute to them was always going to work. The Espace, perhaps not quite in the same way. But do I think that it deserved to not sell as well as it did? Well, I don't know. I think that with a few tweaks, things like sliding doors, with a bit more thought around the headroom and stuff like that, I think maybe it might have hit down a little bit better. A few key changes on the drawing table might have made it a more attractive prospect. But for me, I don't think it hits the mark, although I do like the fact that it is very original in its design and its thought process. Now I'm going to be heading back now to hand the keys back. It's been a whirlwind afternoon. To get a call, to jump in such a rare car, to then take it out on a test drive, well, I can't sum up quite how exciting it's been. It's been a good bit of fun. Now I hope you don't mind that I brought something a little bit more modern to the channel, but I'm sure you'll agree with me that with it being so unique and rare that I couldn't pass up the opportunity. Now next Sunday we're back to Bonafide Classics. We're back to a bit of repairing, but until then, take care and drive safely.